Hey, what's going on guys? Jason here, and in this video I'll be doing another React project, and specifically we'll also be doing Redux. What we have here is we're going to have a project that's called Redux Movies, and all it is it's a movie list. So we have a movie list here on the left with the movie name, and then we have a button called Details, and whenever we click the Details button for a specific movie, we will get the details here on the right. And so, yeah, so we'll be using Redux to handle the state for our project. And normally you wouldn't use Redux for a small project like this, but I think it's a good project to get some practice using Redux and learning the concepts since I'm learning it myself. So, yeah, so let's get into it. So I have a diagram here sort of explaining the flow of Redux and how it works. Let's see, let me move this out of the way. Okay, so Redux is basically it's a place where we're going to store all of our state. So what Redux does is it gives us basically a big state object. So here would be our store, which is going to contain our state. And in the Redux store, we have this thing called reducers. And you can think of reducers as individual pieces of state. So in our project, we have our state would basically just be the movies. So the state was just going to have like all our movie data, and then the other piece of state would be the selected movie. So those would just be our two pieces of state. And what Redux will then do is just basically take those pieces of state and put them in one object together and then return it to our front end view. So the store is basically made up of individual pieces of state, and then Redux will just combine those individual pieces together. But yeah, so that's all that is. And the way Redux, or the way we update the state in Redux, we have to basically dispatch actions onto our Redux store in order to update the state. And how that works is we have this thing called an action or action creator, and all an action creator all it is just a function that returns an object. And so that object will have a couple properties. It'll just be the action type, so it's just the name of the action, and also the payload, which is the data that we're going to send off with that action. And we also have a dispatch function here, and dispatch is a part of the Redux library. And all its job is to basically take actions and dispatch them onto our Redux store. So we have our action here that we're going to fire off. Dispatch will take that action and then dispatch it onto our store. And so when that action gets dispatched to the store, it's going to go through, sorry, excuse me. It's going to go to one of our reducers. So the reducer is basically it's a it's a function that it's going to take in an action, and it's going to be checking to see what action type it is. And based on that action type, we will return a new piece of state. So in our case, let's say we have the clicking of the details button. So that'll be an action that gets fired, and with that action, we're going to send off the movie data that we want to view. So that action will get fired off. It'll go through the dispatch function. The dispatch will dispatch it onto our store, and then the reducers, and it's going to go to one of these reducers. So it's going to be saying, okay, what action or what reducer am I supposed to go to? So let's say I go to this one. This reducer function is going to say, okay, are you of this action type? If not, then I'm just going to return the initial piece of state that I already have. So then we'll go on to another reducer, and this reducer will say, okay, are you of this action type? And if it is, then great, we're going to take the data that you have, and we're going to basically return a new piece of state. And so once the reducer gets updated and the state is updated, what happens is then Redux will combine those pieces of state, and then it'll send it off to our React front-end view, to our React components. But before that happens, it's going to go through this connect function, and this connect function comes from a third library called React Redux. And basically all that does is it's like, you can think of it as the glue between React and Redux, because they're both two separate libraries. And in order for the React part of our project to get the state from Redux, we need to somehow like figure out how to communicate between those two. So that's where this third-party library comes in, and we have this connect function we're going to make use of, where it's basically going to just take the state from our Redux store and attach it to the React component's props, so we can have access to our state via props in our React component. So hopefully that made sense. If not, we'll go into the code and hopefully things will start to get dissected and we can figure out how everything's working. But yeah, so let's get into it. So we can close that out, and let me Control C. Okay, cool. So I have a create React app project going. Basically, so I deleted out the boilerplate code there. So first thing I'm going to do in our source folder, I'm going to create 3 folders called, let's see, so I'll call this one actions, and then I'll do another one called reducers, and the third one will be called, whoops, alright, components. Okay. So first thing I am going to do is I'm going to create the action for our project. So we'll do index.js. All right, and so we're only really going to have one action, and that's going to be whenever we click on the details button to get the details of the book. So what I'll do is I'll export const select movie. And okay, so remember, all an action is just a function. Let's see, so we're going to do that. And what this action creator does is it returns an object. Okay. And so the properties I'm going to do or add here will be type, and I'll call this action type movie selected. And then the payload, I'll give it a payload property. And I will give it the movie parameter that we passed in here. All right. So that's all finished. Looks like we're good on there. And now the next thing we'll do is we'll handle our reducers. So then let's see here. So what I'll call our reducers, let's see. Reducers, so I'll do index.js there. Okay. So in our reducers index.js file, I'm going to create 2 functions. Let's see, the first one, I'll call it const movies reducer equals there we go. And so this movie reducer will just be all the movie data that we need. And so I currently have it saved here so we don't have to type it all out. There we go. Okay. And now I will create another reducer. I'll call this one selected movie reducer. All right, so this reducer is actually going to be receiving a action. So what I'll do is in the arguments here, or the parameters, I'm going to give it the parameter of state because our reducers will basically have access to the state, and then we'll do null for the initial state, and then action. Okay, so action is going to be the action that we're going to be receiving from our dispatch function. And so what I'll do now is I'll create a switch statement, and we're going to do action.type case. All right. So for the action.type, so remember, action is going to be the action that we're going to be sending off, which is this. So action.type is going to be referring to whatever we have here. So action.type in the case of movie selected, going to then return action.payload. Okay. And we're going to give it a default of just the initial state, which is null. Okay. So then, so this selected movie reducer will be in charge of handling the piece of state that will just keep track of whatever movie is selected. So then if in the case of movie, so if the action type is movie selected, we're going to return the action.payload that we get, which will be the movie data. If not, we're just going to return state, which will have this initial value of null. All right, cool. Okay, so now what we will do is from this file, I will actually export default, and I actually need to import a library here, or I'm sorry, a function, and it's going to be called combine reducers from Redux. Okay. So this is a function, and in there we're going to pass in an object, and then we are going to add these properties. So movies, and all movies is going to be the movies reducer function that we have, which will return the movie data, and selected movie will be equal to selected movie reducer. Cool. So this is where the combining of the reducers come into place, where we're going to take the pieces of state and basically just combine them into one object, and we're going to give it these properties, so movies and selected movie. Okay, so that's what our reducers file will export. It's going to be an object with the pieces of state combined. Alright, cool. So now, let's see, so we have our actions, we have our reducers. So let's see, so now what I'll do is, let's go into our index.js. Okay. So then in our index.js, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a couple things. So I'll import, let's see, provider from React Redux, and then I'll import create store from Redux. And also, let me check something real quick. Okay, I don't think I imported these libraries, so that is my mistake. So then what you need to do is, inside your project directory, you need to npm install a couple libraries. So we're going to do npm install -- save Redux and React Redux. Okay, so those are the two libraries we'll need to actually use Redux in our project. All right. Cool. All right, so we have this provider function from the React Redux library, and remember that's what I talked about earlier, basically the glue between React and Redux to basically be able to pass the state from Redux down to our React project. And we have this create store, which will basically create the store for our Redux state. So what we need to do is we're going to have to, so let me reformat this here. And I'm going to make use of that provider function component. So we've got provider there, and we're going to do that. Cool. All right, so on our provider component, we're going to wrap the app component here inside this provider component that we get from the React Redux library. And on that provider component, we're going to add a property called store. And then we will, we will give it this create store function from Redux, and then in there we will, oh sorry, I actually forgot to do something here. I gotta import one more thing. So we gotta do reducers from reducers. So let's see, reducers. Okay, so yeah, so I forgot to import this reducers, and that's basically what we had earlier, which is going to be this object that we created in here. So if we go back into our source, we need to pass in the reducers, which here are the pieces of state, into the create store function from Redux. All right, there we go. Okay, so what the provider function does is it allows us to basically pass down the state from Redux to our React project and all the React components that make use of the Redux state. So I think that looks good there. All right, I think we're done with that. So now I will go ahead and create the components. So for our components, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a movie. Let me do this first. So movie list.js. Okay. So in our movie list.js, I'll need to import React from React. I'll also need to import a function called connect from React Redux. And, let's see. I think we should be good. Oh, sorry. We also need to import our action creator. So import select movie from actions index. Okay. And so now I'm going to create the movie list function. So we'll be doing movie list, and this will be a functional component. I'm going to pass in the props there to make use of the props. And first thing I'll do is I'm going to make a variable. So this will be list items. So this will be the movie list. So let's see, we're going to do we're going to do movies, or I'm sorry. So we're going to do props dot movies dot map, and then we'll do movie. Okay. Uh, so uh, so this props.movies, we're gonna what the React Redux library does is it allows us to get the state from Redux and pass it down to our React component. So we already know that we're gonna have access to this movies uh, movies property from our Redux state. So, and here in a moment I'll also go over how we actually do that. But for now, we'll just make use of that props.movies, and we're going to do, let's see, so this will return, let's see, so we're going to return a div, and let's see, give this a span. So we'll do movie title, and then we'll do button, and this will just be details. Oh, I'm going to give this a key, and I'll just do movie.title. Alright. Okay. So then on our button, we're going to give it a on-click property. So on click, we will pass in a function here, and we're going to return select movie, and we're going to pass in a movie. So remember, select movie, we have access to it from our actions index file. And so this is the action that we have, select movie, and in there we're going to pass in the specific movie object that we're mapping over from this movies object that we get from our state. And so we have that. That looks good. Cool. Alright, so now what I'll do is I'll return, so I'll do a div here, and class name is equal to list container. We're going to give it an h2 of movie list. And then we're going to have a UL there. And then in here, we're going to basically pass in the list items. So we'll do list items right there. All right, that looks good. And so, all right. Okay, so now we're going to get into how to actually have our React component have access to that movie data from our Redux store. So what we need to do is we're going to create a function called map state to props. And so this is a function, and in here we're going to pass in the state. All right. And then we're going to return an object. This will be movies state.movies. All right, and I'll explain a little bit how what's going on. So I'll just go ahead and do this real quick. And we have another function here called, or I'm sorry, an object variable called map dispatch to props. And this will be an object, and we'll give it a property of select movies, or I'm sorry, select movie, and it will be select. Let me see here. Okay, so I actually misspelled this, so this should be select movie with a capital M. And okay, there we go. Okay, so now I will export default this connect function, and let's see. connect. Okay. Okay, so this is kind of where the magic happens. So we have our React component here called movie list. It's just a regular React component which has props, and so the way that we get the state from Redux to our React component, like I said before, is through this connect function that comes from the React Redux library, which is a separate library from both React and Redux. So we have access to this connect function, and this connect function takes in a and it's as a parameters, it takes in two things. So it takes in a function here that we just named map state to props, and we're going to pass in this function into this connect function. So we're going to do map state to props, and so connect will take this function and it's going to basically communicate with Redux, and it's going to take the state from Redux and pass it into our map state to props function. And so that's where we get the state parameter from. And so what this function is going to do, it's going to return this object with this property called movies, and then the value is going to be the state from Redux. It's going to be state.movies, because remember when we in our reducers here, when we combined the reducers together, we have this property called movies, so that's the movie data that we need. And so then what's happening is it's taking that that object, and it's going to basically put it on the props of our React component. So now that's the reason why we have this props.movies. So that's how we have access to this movies prop. It's from this map state to props function. So that's how we get the state from Redux to our React component. So hopefully that made sense. But so then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to pass in another. Okay, and so what this map dispatch to props object is going to do, it's going to allow us to have it's going to basically attach this select movie property here onto our React props. So before I had made a mistake. This actually should have been props.selectMovie, because our select movie action creator is actually going to be attached to our props. And so the reason why we're doing this, it's basically so that we can, so it's basically so that the Redux dispatch function can dispatch that action creator that we're going to fire off to the Redux store. So that's the only reason why we're doing this. So hopefully that makes sense. So we have map dispatch to props there. So that's why we can do, so that's going to basically add that select movie action creator onto our props, so that when we actually invoke it, the dispatch function from Redux will invoke that action creator and dispatch it to the Redux store. Okay. So now that we have that, we're going to add another parens here, and in here we will pass the map. Oops, sorry, map movie list component. So this probably looks a little bit funny. All this is basically we're invoking the connect function, and what this connect function does is actually it returns another function, and it's going to basically pass these functions onto that function that it returned, and then we're doing this print, we're invoking it again, and from that function that gets returned from the first invocation, we're going to pass in this movie list component to the function that connect returns. So that way our movie list component will be a connected component, which means it's a component that has access to the Redux store. All right. So hopefully, okay, so we got all that done there. Cool, it looks good. All right. And now we're going to create our last component. Call it movie details.js. All right. So in movie details.js, I'm going to import React. Let's see, React. And we will then again make use of connect from React and Redux. Okay. So we'll do another functional component, movie details, props. There we go. And so what I'll do is I'll do a if condition here, if props dot selected movie. Let's see. Actually, let me do this first. Maybe this will make more sense. So we know that this component will have access to a piece of our state. So we're going to do map state to props again. We're going to do state, and then we're going to return an object, and on our props for this component, we want to have access to the movie data. So the prop will be called selected movie, and then it'll be state.select movie. Because remember, in our reducers here, selected movie. So that's the piece of state that we want, and we're going to pass it onto our component as a prop. All right, so then here we have props.selectedMovie. So if no movie is selected, all we will do is, let's see, I'm going to give this a class name, details, container, and then style. I'm going to do some inline styling here. We'll give it a width of 70%. And we'll do an H2, call it movie. We'll have another div here called class name equals properties, and p tag, we'll do select movie. Alright. So if the selected movie is null, meaning if it's false, then we'll output this. Else, I'm going to return. Oops, return. Forgot to add my return statement here. Alright, there we go. And let me format this here. Okay, cool. Alright. Cool. So if the selected movie prop actually does have the movie data that we need, we're going to add here title, and we'll do, let's see, so we'll do props.selectedMovie, and this movie will have the title, and then we're going to do release date and then we will do, let's see, props dot select movie dot release date. All right, and then the last one will be the rating, and then props dot selected movie dot rating. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to export default. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do it. Oh yeah. So we're going to do that connect again. So again, we're going to pass in state, map state to props. So that way this React component will be a connected component with the this specific state. And then for the second invocation, we'll pass in the name of the component, which will be movie details. Alright, that looks good. Alright, cool. And everything looks good so far. So now in here, what I'll do is I will import our components. So first I'll do movie details from components. Movie details. Right. And I'll import movie list from components and movie list. Alright, so in our app component, we will give an h1 of Redux movies, and then we'll in here give this a class of container for the styling, and then we will do first we'll do movie list. Oops, that's not gonna work. Movie list, and then movie details. Okay. Alright, so let's see if we get any errors. Let's go back. Oops, gotta restart the server. Give it a little bit of time. Alright, movie list.js, select movie is not defined, line 32. So movie list.js, line 32. Select movie, okay. I think, yeah, I think I misspelled that, so that should be, oh no, that's select movie. Okay, so that's select movie, so that should be like written like that. Okay, that looks good. Select movie, alright, let's go back. Alright, so if we click on details, we get our movie data. Alright, cool, everything looks good. Alright, so hopefully this video was helpful to understand how Redux works. I'm still learning Redux myself, so I feel like this is a good project to kind of get our feet wet. But yeah, so if you guys like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more content, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.